You're not even living, Caleb. You just exist. Wake up, eat cereal, go to work, and die a little more every day. Her words hit harder than I expected. I stood there in the middle of our kitchen, holding the spatula like it was some kind of shield. The eggs were burning, but I couldn't move. Jenna, my wife of 7 years, leaned against the counter with a wine glass in hand. At 10 a.m., like she was auditioning for a part one didn't know she wanted. I blinked. Excuse me. She didn't flinch. You heard me. There was a smirk on her lips, but not the playful kind I used to love. This one was cruel, dismissive, the kind you give a stranger who bumped your shoulder and didn't say sorry. I can't do this anymore, she added. I feel more alive in a 10-minute conversation with people who actually take risks than I do in this loop with you. The pan sizzled louder, and the smell of burnt yolk filled the room. I turned off the stove slowly. Not for her. For me. You mean people like, don't, she interrupted, slicing the air between us. Don't start some pathetic jealousy routine. This isn't about any one person. It's about you. How dull you've become. That one stung. Not because it was true, but because deep down, I'd had the same thought more than once. I swallowed hard. So what now? You want to blow up our whole life because I fold the laundry too neatly. Jenna rolled her eyes, walked past me, and placed her glass in the sink with too much force. I want something real. Something that doesn't feel like a spreadsheet with a heartbeat. She left the room without another word. Her bare feet slapped softly down the hall, the way they always did, but today it sounded like she was walking out of my life in slow motion. I stood there, staring at that stupid wine glass. A few drops of red staining the bottom, like some kind of metaphor I was too tired to interpret. My name is Caleb. I'm 34. I work in IT support for a school district in Michigan. I bike to work most days. I organize the mail into neat stacks. I always say thank you to cashiers and wave at the neighbor's dog like he's a person. And apparently, I'm boring enough to be discarded like old furniture. We used to have something, Jenna and I, quiet nights watching bad movies, long Sunday walks without talking much, but comfortable in the silence. I thought that kind of simplicity was beautiful. She thinks it's decay. I didn't sleep that night. Her words bounced around my skull like marbles in a jar. You just exist. Like being stable was some kind of crime. But something else happened that night. Around midnight, as I stared at the ceiling, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I didn't recognize. It read, "You don't know me, but I think your wife is sleeping with my boyfriend. We should talk." I stared at it for a long, long time. And that's when everything began to shift. I didn't answer the message right away. I reread it, twice, then a third time, thinking maybe I was just sleep-deprived and reading into it. The sender's name was just a number. No profile picture. Just the words, "I think your wife is sleeping with my boyfriend." There's something surreal about a stranger knowing more about your life than you do. I sat there in the dark, staring at the glow of my phone, heart thudding like I'd just sprinted up a flight of stairs. I didn't know if I should be angry, skeptical, or just scared. I felt all three. But most of all, I felt intrigued. I typed a reply, then erased it. Then typed another. "Who are you?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then came back. Name's Sasha. My boyfriend's name is Eric. I think he and Jenna have been hooking up for months. My chest tightened. Eric. That name landed like a distant echo. I couldn't remember Jenna ever mentioning it. But that didn't mean much. She stopped sharing parts of her day with me a long time ago. "Why come to me?" I asked. "Because I need confirmation. And because you deserve to know." That last line did something to me. It wasn't just the words. It was the calm finality in them. Like she wasn't here for drama or attention. She was here because this was the only card left to play. I stared into the dark for what felt like hours, turning everything over in my head. Could this be a prank? Some mistake? But then again, Jenna had been coming home later lately, claiming spontaneous happy hours, weekend work events, even yoga retreats. I never questioned her, not because I was blind, but because I was tired, and part of me didn't want to know. But now that the curtain had been tugged back, even just slightly, I couldn't unsee it. The next morning, I replied, "Let's talk." But not over text. She agreed. We met that evening. Neutral ground. A quiet little coffee shop in a strip mall. The kind of place where nobody really listens to your conversation unless you start shouting. She walked in 5 minutes late. Tall, pale, dressed in dark denim and a faded military jacket. Her hair was short, razor-edged, jet black. But what hit me first was her expression, sharp, unreadable, like she'd seen too much and learned to say very little. "Caleb?" she asked, scanning the tables. I nodded and stood to shake her hand. "Sasha." We sat. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was measured. Two people sitting across from each other, each holding the frayed edge of the same secret. She didn't dance around it. "I found a message on Eric's phone last week," she said, cutting straight into it. It was from someone named Jenna. I didn't recognize the number, but the tone, the kind of shorthand they used, it wasn't friendly. It was intimate. There were others, too. Pictures. Not explicit. Just close. Personal. I clenched my jaw. My throat went dry. "Jenna never mentioned Eric," I said quietly. Sasha gave a humorless smile. I figured. She leaned back in her seat, fingers wrapped around her coffee like it was the only thing grounding her. "I'm not here to blow up your life. I just want the truth. I need to know I'm not crazy." I nodded slowly. "Same." We sat in silence again. This time, it wasn't empty, it was agreement. Mutual recognition. Two strangers who shared nothing except a single, invisible thread, betrayal. "Why now?" I asked. "Why message me?" She looked me dead in the eye. "Because I'm tired of pretending I don't see the signs." And I figured, maybe you were too. She wasn't wrong. I'd been pretending for months, smiling through the small talk, laughing at stories I didn't really listen to, holding Jenna's hand during dinner with friends, even as I felt her slipping away inch by inch. I didn't know where this thing with Sasha would go, whether we'd team up, drift apart, or never speak again. But one thing was clear, I wasn't alone anymore. And that changed everything. Over the next few days, we kept it simple. Sasha and I texted occasionally, never more than a few lines. No over-explanation, no drama. Just a steady exchange of facts and fragments. Where Jenna had been on certain nights. What Eric had told Sasha. The names, the overlaps, the excuses that didn't quite line up. It was strange, this quiet rhythm we fell into. Not quite friendship. Definitely not anything romantic. It was more like co-survivorship. She called it pattern hunting. I called it truth maintenance. We met again. A park this time. Neutral, open space. She brought a notebook filled with scribbled dates, arrows, times. I brought a folder of receipts Jenna thought she'd hidden well. She never realized I still checked the joint credit card charges every month. One stood out, a boutique hotel downtown. Midweek. She claimed to be at a networking mixer. Sasha's brow lifted. Eric was supposedly at a client meeting that same night. We stared at the page. It didn't prove anything on its own. But piece by piece, the puzzle was taking shape. Still, it wasn't just the intel that kept drawing me back to Sasha. It was the way she carried herself, bruised, but sharp. Hurt, but not broken. And oddly, that made me feel a little less broken myself. We didn't talk much about ourselves. But one evening, she offered a crack in the wall. "I've been with Eric since college," she said. 12 years. Built our life together from the ground up. I used to think we were the kind of couple people envied. Her voice didn't tremble, but something in her eyes did. "And now?" I asked softly. She looked away. "Now I feel like I've been living in someone else's daydream. One he's already woken up from." That hit me. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know that feeling." It wasn't much, but it was enough to build something on. Not a friendship, not yet, but a shared clarity. The next day, I started playing a different role at home. The good husband. I kissed Jenna goodbye in the morning. Asked how her day went when I got back. Pretended I didn't notice how often her phone was flipped face down, or how she'd stop mid-sentence when a message came in. I didn't argue, didn't question. I observed. I smiled at her stories, held her hand when friends were watching, and complimented her outfit before dinner, like a man trying to rekindle something real. But in reality, I was listening, watching, collecting. Bit by bit, I was turning her fiction into a trail I could follow. And she didn't suspect a thing. Sasha and I met in secret places, parking lots, quiet cafes, even once in a bookstore where we pretended to be browsing poetry. Every time we met, we got sharper, funnier too, like two people slowly emerging from emotional lockdown. I started noticing things about her, how she always tapped her fingers when thinking, how she never finished her coffee, but always ordered it anyway. One afternoon, after we'd compared notes again, I walked her to her car. She paused before getting in. "You ever think we're doing this because it gives us something to hold on to?" she asked. "Probably," I said honestly. "But I'd rather hold on to something real than keep choking on lies." She smiled at that. Not a big smile. Just enough to let me know she was still in this. Still with me. I watched her drive off, then stood in the parking lot for a long moment, staring at my reflection in the car window. I barely recognized the man looking back. And maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Pretending to be the perfect husband wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. In fact, once I committed to the role, it became strangely effortless. I knew exactly what Jenna needed from me, attention in all the right places, space in the others. I knew when to nod, when to smile, when to laugh like I meant it. Deception isn't always a performance. Sometimes it's a mirror, reflecting back exactly what the other person wants to see. At home, I became dependable again. Helpful. Curious. I cooked more dinners, folded the laundry, even offered to watch the shows she liked without my usual half-hearted groans. And Jenna? She responded exactly as I expected, like a flower turning towards sunlight she never thought would return. She laughed more, touched me more. Her guilt disguised as affection was almost convincing. Almost. She didn't realize I had her phone mirrored, that I bought a cheap burner to record her late-night calls in the bathroom when she thought I was asleep, or that I'd started keeping a running log in my notebook, dates, times, voice inflections. Every whisper mattered now. The funny thing is, the more she believed we were healing, the more reckless she became. I knew when she was lying. Her voice got too soft, too sweet. Her kisses lingered just a second longer after certain days, like she needed to reset something inside her. And while she played the role of a reawakened wife, I met Sasha in places where no one would recognize us. We never called it friendship. We didn't need to. There was something between us, something slow and cautious, but undeniably there. It wasn't romantic in the way movies paint it. It was deeper than flirtation, quieter than desire. It was two wounded people learning to breathe near each other again. One night, we sat in my car parked outside a closed bookstore, fog on the windows, the air between us thick with unspoken thoughts. Sasha stared out at the dark street. Sometimes I wonder if I should just leave him without another word. Just disappear. I leaned back, resting my head against the seat. And sometimes I wonder if I should stay, just to see how far she'll go to keep up the lie. She turned to me. "You're not like her, you know." "I'm not like who?" "Jenna. You're quiet. Careful. You notice things. She doesn't see it, but I do." I didn't know what to say to that. Compliments from Sasha always landed differently. They weren't flattery. They were observations, heavy with meaning. I glanced at her hands resting in her lap, steady, pale, marked faintly with ink from her notes. I had the sudden, irrational urge to reach for them, but I didn't. Instead, I said the only thing that felt honest. "I'm not trying to win this game. I just want to understand why it started." She nodded slowly, like she knew that feeling too well. Back home, Jenna was asleep when I returned, curled on my side of the bed, blanket tangled around her like a secret. I stood there for a moment, watching her chest rise and fall. It would have hurt, once. Now it just made me tired. I slipped into bed, careful not to wake her, and stared at the ceiling. The evidence was mounting. The distance between who I was and who I was pretending to be was shrinking. And Sasha? She was no longer just an accomplice. She was becoming something else entirely. The invitation arrived on thick ivory cardstock, embossed with gold leaf, annoyingly pretentious. Jenna was practically glowing when she handed it to me across the counter. "It's black tie. Masquerade theme. Eric's company is throwing it for some new investor." That name again, Eric. She said it so smoothly I might have missed the meaning if I didn't already know what I was looking for. I raised an eyebrow. "Eric? The coworker who sells yoga mats or the one who's obsessed with scotch?" She smiled like it was a joke. "Neither. The marketing guy. You met him once at that wine thing." I hadn't, but I nodded anyway. That night, I texted Sasha. She invited me to the masquerade. Her reply came within seconds. "He invited me too." I stared at the screen for a long time before I typed, "We should go. Together." We didn't dress like a couple. We didn't hold hands or arrive in the same car. But when she stepped into the hotel lobby, silver mask, sleek black dress, lips painted blood wine red, I felt something shift. It wasn't possession. It wasn't revenge. It was alignment. Two pieces snapping into place. The ballroom was a cathedral of glass and chandelier light. Masked figures moved like a dream through glitter and shadows, laughing beneath anonymity. Jenna wore deep emerald, her mask feathered and dramatic, the kind she probably spent hours selecting. She didn't see me at first. I watched her float through the room, clutching Eric's arm. Yes, Eric. Tall, manicured, with a wolfish grin and the smug confidence of someone who'd never been told no. I could see the ease in his posture, the intimacy of their proximity. It didn't surprise me, but it did solidify something inside me. When Sasha walked toward me from across the floor, the effect was seismic. Everything slowed. She didn't walk, she glided. And when she reached me, she tilted her head just slightly and said, "Still want the truth?" I offered my arm. Now more than ever. We didn't approach Jenna right away. That wasn't the plan. We danced first, a slow, steady rhythm that felt less like movement and more like mutual understanding. Whispers passed between masks, champagne flutes clinked, and the scent of cologne and old money lingered in the air like fog. Then it happened. Jenna turned, laughing at something Eric had said, probably some asinine joke, and her eyes locked on mine. It was instant, paralyzing. And then she saw Sasha. You could see it all unfold in real time, the flicker of confusion, the pause, and then the cold realization as Sasha lifted her mask just slightly. Just enough. Jenna's mouth parted. Her grip on Eric's arm slackened. She didn't say a word, but her expression crumbled like porcelain under pressure. Panic. Not rage. Not guilt. Just raw, unfiltered panic. Sasha didn't smile. She didn't blink. She just held that stare steady, unwavering. I turned toward Jenna and raised my glass in a mock toast. She couldn't look away. The mask had finally slipped. But the real unmasking? That was still to come. For a few seconds, no one moved. The room buzzed around us, champagne glasses clinking, soft jazz drifting from the stage, polite laughter circling tables. But right in the center of it all stood Jenna, frozen, like someone had yanked the gravity out from beneath her heels. Eric leaned in, whispering something into her ear, probably some half-witted damage control. But Jenna's body had already stiffened. Her eyes weren't leaving Sasha. And Sasha? She took a step forward. Not fast, not dramatic, just precise, like a scalpel pressed gently to skin. "You know who I am," she said loud enough for the table next to us to turn their heads. Jenna didn't deny it. She couldn't. Her hands trembled slightly, clutching her purse like it was the only solid thing left in her world. Eric narrowed his eyes. Who the hell is this? Sasha turned her gaze on him, and for a second, even behind his designer mask, you could see him flinch. "I'm the girl you've been lying to," she said, voice calm. "And she pointed to me, he's the husband you've both been using like a convenient alibi." A few people stopped dancing. Conversations dipped. Somewhere near the bar, someone's glass cracked against the floor. Jenna's face went pale. "Caleb," she said, her voice laced with disbelief. "What are you doing?" I stepped beside Sasha, looked her straight in the eye, returning the favor. She blinked. "What? You've been performing for months, Jenna. Lying, deflecting, disappearing for networking events." I played the patient husband because I needed to see where the cracks really were. Jenna looked like she wanted to scream, but her voice failed her. Then Sasha, with a grace I didn't know she possessed, picked up a glass of red wine from a passing tray. She turned to Eric. "Here's to transparency," she said, and tossed the wine squarely into his chest. The crowd gasped. Eric stumbled back, his pristine white shirt bleeding merlot, hands out in protest. "Are you insane?" "No," she replied coolly. "I'm done." Jenna grabbed my wrist. "We can talk about this, Caleb. Not here. Please." I looked at her, really looked. For the first time in months, I didn't feel confused or torn. I felt clear. "You don't get to rewrite this, Jenna. Not now." She stepped back, wounded. "So what? You're with her now?" It wasn't a question. It was a desperate accusation. I didn't answer. The room had gone uncomfortably still. Eyes locked on us from all sides, strangers, colleagues, guests caught in the middle of a crumbling lie. Sasha brushed her dress off calmly. "You should really get him a towel," she said to Jenna, motioning toward Eric's soaked shirt. "Or maybe just let him drip." I didn't wait for more drama. I took Sasha's hand, not because I needed to prove anything, but because the gesture felt solid, grounding. We walked out of the ballroom without another word, passing a hallway lined with gold-trimmed mirrors. I caught our reflection only once. We didn't look victorious. We looked like survivors. Out on the street, the cool air wrapped around us. Sasha shivered, just once. I slipped off my jacket and placed it around her shoulders without saying a thing. Behind us, the music resumed. Inside, they'd go back to pretending. But for us, the masks were off. And everything was different now. We didn't speak much on the ride back. Sasha stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass. I kept my hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road, though my thoughts spun out in every direction. What we'd done wasn't revenge. It was revelation. And now that the truth was out, there was no undoing it. I dropped her off at her place, a modest walk-up with ivy crawling up the side. She looked at me for a long moment before getting out. "Are you okay?" I asked. Her smile was soft, almost tired. "You?" I didn't answer. She gave a small nod, and without another word, she disappeared up the stairs. When I got home, the house was dark. Jenna hadn't beaten me there, which surprised me. I expected fireworks, a barrage of text messages, maybe even luggage on the porch. But nothing. I left my keys on the entry table, loosened my tie, and sat in the kitchen with the lights off. The silence was thick, like the walls themselves were waiting to see what came next. Half an hour later, I heard the garage door. She came in slowly. No heels tonight, just flats. Her hair was pulled back, the glamour stripped away. And something else was gone, too. The spark, the armor, the teeth. Jenna looked hollow. She walked in like someone returning to a house she no longer recognized. Saw me sitting there, and for a few seconds, neither of us said a word. Then she spoke. I don't even know where to begin. I waited. She sank into the chair across from me, her voice quieter now. Not defensive, not performative, just raw. "I thought I was finding myself," she said. "That's what they call it, right? Reclaiming your identity. Reinventing." I kept telling myself that what I was doing was bold, freeing. She let out a hollow laugh. "But all I really did was run." Still, I said nothing. "I didn't expect you to fight back," she added. "Not like this. You've always been the one who lets things roll off your back, who shrinks when it gets loud." "I'm not shrinking anymore," I said quietly. She nodded, slowly, eyes shimmering under the kitchen light. "You want me to leave?" That question hung between us like a live wire. I took a breath. "I want honesty. If we're going to even pretend to fix this, it starts with the truth." She swallowed. "Hard. I don't know if I love him. Eric, I mean. I think I just loved not being invisible. I hated waking up and realizing I didn't know who I was unless someone else was looking at me." The words didn't hit like daggers. They hit like tired truths. "And now?" I asked. She looked up at me. "No makeup, no mask. Now I feel ashamed. And I don't know how to fix the damage I caused." I didn't reach for her hand. I didn't offer comfort. Because this wasn't the part where things got better. This was the part where she started to feel what I'd lived through for months. "We're going to therapy," I said finally. "You, me. If we're going to stay in this house, we're going to unpack it all, one ugly piece at a time." She nodded slowly. "And Sasha?" she asked, voice thin. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. That night, we slept in the same house, but not in the same bed. And for the first time since all this began, I didn't feel like the one who'd lost something. I felt like the one who might finally find peace. Therapy started quietly. No grand declarations. No breakthroughs in the first 10 minutes. Just Jenna sitting stiffly on a beige couch, arms folded tightly, eyes flickering toward the floor as the therapist asked her gentle, probing questions. I sat across from her, feeling more like an observer than a participant. In the early sessions, Jenna barely spoke. But as the weeks passed, something strange began to happen. She started listening. And then, slowly, she started speaking. Not the curated, dramatic monologue she used to throw at me during arguments, but something real, raw, messy. "I've been using people as mirrors," she admitted one day, her voice barely above a whisper. "Trying to see who I am through their desire for me. I thought that made me powerful, but it just made me lost. I expected to feel satisfaction, vindication. Instead, I felt unsteady. Because somewhere along the way, Jenna's eyes stopped darting. Her walls began to shift. She wasn't making excuses. She wasn't rewriting the past. She was trying, and I didn't know what to do with that. At home, things stayed complicated. We didn't touch much, but the silence between us softened. She cooked more, asked questions, not just polite ones, but the kind that hinted at curiosity, at regret, at hope. Sasha noticed the shift. 2. When we met one evening in her apartment, just the two of us, seated on the couch like old allies, I told her. She's changing. Sasha didn't flinch, but her hands stilled, resting gently on her knees. And how does that make you feel? I didn't know how to answer that. I didn't even know what I felt. Sasha looked tired that night. Not worn out, just emotionally taxed. She had that expression people get when they've run the same loop a dozen times and still haven't found the exit. I didn't expect her to change, I said finally. I thought exposing her would be the end, not the beginning of something new. Sasha let out a slow breath. I get that. There was a long pause. Are you two getting back together? She asked. The question was soft, but it landed like a challenge. I looked at her, really looked. Sasha wasn't the angry, reactive version of herself I met in that first message. She was measured now, calmer, but also protective of herself, of the space between us. I don't know what this is yet, I said honestly. Jen is trying, but trying doesn't erase everything. It just complicates the aftermath. She nodded, looked away, and for the first time, there was a flicker of distance between us. Something unspoken. That night, before I left, I paused at her door. I don't regret meeting you. Sasha didn't smile, but her eyes softened. Me neither. Just, don't lose yourself trying to forgive her. I didn't respond, because a part of me was starting to wonder if, by staying, I already was. Back home, Jenna was curled up on the couch, reading a book she would have once mocked. A self-help memoir or something with flowers on the cover. She looked up when I walked in, searching my face. Good night? She asked, like we were still in a version of this story where that question meant nothing. I gave her a small nod and walked past her. My phone buzzed when I entered the bedroom. A message from Sasha. You okay? I stared at it for a long time, then typed, not sure. Everything's changing, and I don't know if that's a good thing. Her reply came minutes later. Change doesn't always mean healing. Sometimes it just makes the pain quieter. And I realized then, this wasn't just about Jenna anymore. This was about who I was becoming, and whether that version of me still had space in either of their lives. The moment Sasha asked me to meet her, I knew something was different. It wasn't her words. Those were as calm and clipped as always. But there was something behind them, a tremor hiding beneath the surface. Like she was holding her breath and didn't know how much longer she could last. We met in the park again. Same bench. Same time. But this time, she didn't sit right away. She stood with her arms wrapped around herself, jacket tight despite the warmth in the air. Sasha, I asked, rising to meet her. She didn't say anything at first. Just handed me something small and rectangular. A pregnancy test. Positive. The world narrowed. Sounds dropped away. Even the birds seemed to mute themselves. My first instinct was to ask if it was real. My second was to sit down before I collapsed. She sat beside me slowly, exhaling like she'd been holding the news inside for far too long. I wasn't going to tell you right away, she said. I kept thinking, maybe it's better if I just disappear. Handle it alone. But then I realized, that's not what this was. I couldn't find my voice. My chest felt like it had caved in. You're sure? I finally asked, even though I already knew the answer. She nodded. Yeah. We sat there in silence. Two people suddenly pulled into a new gravity, one that neither of us had prepared for. I wanted to say something profound, something steady, reassuring. But all I could do was stare at the little test in my hand and feel the ground shift beneath my feet. What do you want to do? I asked, my voice low. Her eyes flicked toward me. There was fear in them, yes, but something else too. Strength. I don't know yet, she said, but I didn't want to keep it from you. You deserve to know. I nodded slowly, numb. We walked in silence for a while after that. I didn't take her hand, not because I didn't want to, but because everything between us had just changed. When I got home, Jenna was in the kitchen, barefoot and humming. She looked up when she saw me, her smile soft. Hey, she said. You okay? I froze. Because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't playing a role. I wasn't pretending. I was shattered, and I didn't know how to wear a mask over that kind of truth. Jenna stepped closer, noticing the shift in my posture, the hollow in my voice. What happened? I shook my head. Not now. But she didn't back away. She reached out gently, her hand grazing my wrist. Please, Caleb. I want to be there. I'm not hiding anymore. The irony nearly crushed me, because now I was the one holding the secret. I pulled my arm back slowly and gave her a look I hadn't meant to give, a look of someone about to destroy the fragile thing they'd only just started to rebuild. Someone else needs me tonight, I said quietly. And I left. I didn't explain, didn't look back. Outside, the streetlights blurred in my eyes. I got in my car and drove, not to Sasha's, not to anywhere in particular. I just needed motion, because if I stopped moving, I'd have to feel it all at once. A child, a beginning in the middle of everything ending. Sasha and I had started this journey as two people chasing truth. Now we were tangled in a future that neither of us saw coming. And for the first time, I didn't know if I was running away or running towards something I couldn't name. Dinner was Jenna's idea. She asked in that new voice of hers, soft, without an edge. Not an ambush, not a trap, just an invitation. Just us, she said. I want to talk. I agreed. Not because I was ready, but because a part of me needed to see how far this could really go before it broke. She made pasta. Real pasta, from scratch, like she used to back when we were newly married and trying to impress each other with things we found in cookbooks. The kitchen smelled like garlic and lemon zest, and for a brief moment, I could almost pretend we were two people trying again. But when we sat down, her expression told me this wasn't about pretending. I know, she said gently. I froze. She placed her fork down, folded her hands on the table, and looked me dead in the eyes. I know about Sasha. I've known for a while. There was no bitterness in her voice. No sting. Just something quieter. Acceptance, maybe. Or resignation. How? I'm not stupid, Caleb. I saw the changes. The absences. The way your phone stopped being careless. At first, I thought it was just revenge, your version of what I did. But then I saw your face when she called. How fast your tone changed. It wasn't anger. It was care. I didn't say anything. Because what do you say when your wife calmly acknowledges your emotional exit? I didn't confront you, she continued, because I didn't want to push you further away. And somewhere along the way, I realized I was already gone. You just hadn't left yet. Her hands trembled just slightly, but her voice didn't crack. I've made peace with the fact that I hurt you, that I lost myself, and in doing that, I lost you too. I swallowed hard. Jenna reached into a drawer beside her and pulled out a simple folder. She placed it on the table between us and slid it across. Divorce papers. Signed. You don't have to explain anything, she said. You don't have to justify it. I just want you to know. I forgive you. It hit like a punch wrapped in a whisper. You forgive me? I said, not unkindly, just stunned. She nodded. You loved someone who gave you clarity when I gave you chaos. I may not like it, but I understand it. I sat there, the paper in front of me like a loaded truth. I never meant to become this person, I whispered. Not to you. Not to her. Not to myself. Jenna smiled sadly. Maybe we both became people we didn't plan to be. We didn't cry. Not right away. But something passed between us in that moment. A quiet goodbye, laced with every version of us we used to be. When I stood to leave, she walked me to the door. I hope she gives you peace, she said. Even if it's just for a little while. I turned back to look at her. This woman I'd once chosen with everything in me. She looked calm, tired, but grounded. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like her prisoner. I felt like someone she was finally setting free. I got into my car, the divorce papers still unopened beside me. I didn't drive straight to Sasha's. I parked 3 blocks away and just sat there. Because sometimes the end doesn't come with a crash. Sometimes it comes with permission. The knock came just after 10. I already knew it was her. I hadn't texted. I hadn't called. But somehow Sasha knew. She stood there in the doorway, eyes red, one hand resting on the curve of her belly beneath her coat. I didn't know where else to go, she said, voice raw. You're always welcome, I replied. She stepped inside slowly, took in the silence, the stillness, the absence of Jenna. She signed the papers, I said. She let go. Sasha nodded, but her face didn't change. She sat on the couch like it was a foreign country, tense, guarded. I'm scared, Caleb, she whispered. Not just of this, she touched her stomach, but of what it means. What if this is just a cycle? What if we're not escaping anything, just repeating it in a new shape? Her question gutted me, because I'd been asking myself the same thing every day since I left. I knelt in front of her and took her hands. I don't know what happens next, I said, but I do know this. We didn't lie to each other. Not once. And maybe that's enough of a start. She looked down at me for a long time. Then, finally, she leaned forward and rested her forehead against mine. No promises, No declarations. Just two people, trying. Outside, the wind picked up. The world kept moving. But in that quiet room, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lost. I just felt here.